My mother-in-law's words sliced through the air as we sat in the restaurant, the aroma of the lavish meal before us tainted by her disdain. "Do you truly believe there's a place for you here?" she added, a smirk playing on her lips. "They're just a daughter-in-law, not blood," she continued, her hand waving dismissively, a gesture that felt like an invitation to leave. Anger coursed through me, making my hands tremble as I pushed back my chair to stand. But before I could exit the room, she halted me with a raised hand. "Wait, what about the bill? If you're leaving early, leave the money," she demanded, a smug expression on her face. I met her gaze with a defiant smile. "Why would I pay for a stranger's bill?" I retorted. "My name is Maya, a 29-year-old office worker. My husband Terrell and I are content in our relationship, except for one persistent problem: my overbearing mother-in-law. Living close to her, she invaded our lives, criticizing my cooking and homemaking skills. Uninvited, she'd barge in, pointing out every flaw, all while pretending to be a concerned mother. When I complained to Terrell, he didn't believe me. In his eyes, his mother was just a loving parent, blind to her manipulations. As time passed, her intrusions grew worse. Armed with a key my husband had given her, she'd enter our home, criticizing and complaining about everything. She even tarnished my reputation with the neighbors, spreading lies about me. I pleaded with Terrell to move away, but he remained indifferent, busy with work. Then a turning point arrived. His successful project led to a promotion and a significant salary increase. Seizing the opportunity, I suggested expanding our family. Now that our income has grown, perhaps it's time to think about having children, I proposed, hoping this positive change might finally open his eyes to the toxic presence of his mother. I thought it was a good idea, but if we're considering having children, I prefer to live in a more child-friendly town. There are very few child care centers here, and there are no parks for children to play in. Isn't it time for us to move? Finally, my husband gave a positive response about moving, and I was happier about this than the news of his promotion. However, that feeling didn't last long. The next day, my mother-in-law came over as usual without any notice. I was fed up, assuming she had come to nag again, but something seemed different this time. I've decided to celebrate my son's promotion, so I've reserved a restaurant. It's a very expensive place, but it's elegant, the food is top-notch, and the staff's attitude is wonderful. It has a great word-of-mouth reputation, she said, inviting me to join. "That's nice, good for you," I replied, trying to be polite, although I was as unfriendly as ever. "Well, never mind. I want you to come to this restaurant too. Please come," she insisted. "I'll check my schedule, but it's probably impossible," I added. "Don't say that. We'll be waiting for you," she insisted. Even though I answered that way, she just smirked and left. Until now, she had been excluding me, but now she was inviting me and saying she'd wait. There must be something going on. When I asked my husband when he got home, he said he had already told his mother that we would go together. She had reserved that restaurant for us, and he was looking forward to it. "Do you feel the same way, Maya?" he asked. "Sorry, but I'm not looking forward to it. I don't know how much money it will cost at such an expensive place. I don't want to go. Just say I have urgent business and enjoy yourself," I replied, feeling apprehensive about the situation. "Why are you thinking so negatively? Besides, it's not just us going to the restaurant. My brothers are bringing their wives too. It would be bad if you didn't come with the whole family," my husband insisted, excited about going to a fancy restaurant for the first time. Even though I didn't want to, I felt compelled to comply. My words no longer reached my husband if he believed my mother-in-law more than me. I decided to record her harassment with a voice recorder I bought online. She was probably planning to harass me at the celebration too. I would record her voice and play it for my husband. If he still defended her, I would divorce him. With that decision, I felt a bit better. Still, the day to meet my mother-in-law at the restaurant was depressing, and I kept sighing. I hardly knew my husband's brothers, having only met them at the wedding, and I had no memory of talking to their wives beyond greetings. Hey, did you love and enjoy the story? Take a moment to like and subscribe for more. When we arrived at the restaurant, the waiter led us to a large room where my mother-in-law, the other son and his wife, and the third son and his wife were already seated. The lavish spread adorned the table with just one vacant seat. My husband, puzzled, tilted his head in confusion. Did the waiter make a mistake with the number of seats? He wondered aloud. "I'll go ask. Everyone, start eating," he said, leaving the room. The moment he stepped out, my mother-in-law stood up, her expression twisted into a sneer. There's no seat for you. Why should I invite a stranger who just married my son to a family celebration? She said, her tongue dripping with disdain. So, I'll give you a choice. Show your sincerity and be accepted as family, or leave and never show your face to me again. Choose now. I'm leaving, I answered without hesitation. My mother-in-law was momentarily flustered. Did she think I would beg her to recognize me as a family in this situation? No way. Listen to the end. If you pay the entire bill here, I'll recognize you as Terrell's wife. You must be frustrated being treated as a stranger, so pay up and become family, she demanded. I told you I'm leaving. Why should I pay for someone else's family's bill? I retorted, turning my back on her. My mother-in-law slammed the table and shouted, Don't you get it? I'm offering to make you family. Are you okay with being a stranger? Pay up! No, I'm fine being a stranger. Since I'm a stranger, I won't pay for your meal. Goodbye, mother-in-law, I said, and I left. She chased after me, but by the time she reached the entrance of the room, I was already at the exit of the restaurant. When I got home, thinking I'd email my husband, he returned within 10 minutes. The waiter said the reservation number wasn't wrong, and my mom was causing a scene, he said. It seemed like my declaration that I was fine being a stranger had also said something about the eldest son's wife and the third son's wife. They had previously fought. Enduring harassment silently was the only option, but seeing me talk back made them realize they could do it too. In their momentum, both of them left, and our husbands, the eldest and third sons, hurriedly followed suit. I had braced myself for complaints from my mother-in-law, and sure enough, within 3 hours, the phone started ringing incessantly. It was so disruptive that I eventually blocked the calls. However, one call managed to get through from an unknown number. Hello, sorry for calling so late. Is this Maya's mobile phone? The man on the other end identified himself as a police officer from the nearby police station. He informed me that after being left alone, my mother-in-law had tried to eat what she could and subsequently attempted to make me foot the bill. Later on, however, the restaurant staff, already disapproving of my mother-in-law after the earlier disturbance, declined her request. They believed I wouldn't return to pay after leaving in anger. Ignoring all her calls, my mother-in-law was then suggested to pay by card, but she lacked a credit card and hadn't brought enough cash to cover everyone's meals. In a desperate bid, she tried contacting other family members to cover the costs, but no one responded. Frustrated and cornered, she started yelling, blaming me entirely for the situation. Her anger escalated, leading to a scene where she damaged expensive vases and flower pots at the restaurant. This chaos prompted the restaurant to call the police. The responding officers managed to calm down my furious mother-in-law, but she adamantly refused to accept any wrongdoing. The restaurant not only went unpaid, but also was burdened with a troublesome customer. They sought help to escort her home. Feeling guilty about ignoring a call from the police, my husband and I reluctantly returned to the restaurant. Upon our arrival, my mother-in-law was being pacified by the police. The moment she spotted me, she raised her eyes and, crossing her arms, screamed, "You're good for nothing. This situation happened because you didn't pay the bill. It's natural to help your mother, isn't it? Pay up now." I was utterly astonished when my mother-in-law uttered something almost threatening, even with the police present. They had clearly stated that if no one took her home, they would either escort her to her in-laws' house in a patrol car or arrest her for dining and dashing. Please take her away, arrest her, or whatever it takes. Just make her take responsibility, I said, my voice cold and resolute. Mother-in-law's eyes widened in shock at my words. How could you say something so cold? I can't believe it. Just pay up. It's bad luck to have a family member arrested, she pleaded. I don't care. I'm not family, and I don't want to get close to someone who's talking crazy and causing a scene, I replied, attempting to leave the restaurant and let the police handle the situation. However, my husband, who had remained silent all along, glared at me. I understand that what was said and done to Maya was terrible, but is it something bad enough to be arrested for? He questioned, defending his mother. You're missing the point. She's in trouble with the police because she dined and dashed and caused a scene at the restaurant. I have nothing to do with it. Or are you saying that I'm the one at fault for not paying for 6 people's meals even though I didn't eat? I retorted. My husband fell silent but walked past me toward the police and the restaurant staff. I knew what he intended to do. Anticipating his actions, I called out to his retreating, "If you're going to pay for her meal and compensate them, we're getting divorced. Think about that." My husband didn't respond to my words and silently took out his wallet. I sighed and left the restaurant, walking the familiar road back home. I started packing my essential belongings, preparing to leave. Just before the date changed, my husband finally returned. Mom's not getting arrested. It seems she was really in the wrong, but the restaurant said they'd forgive her if I compensated them and promised she'd never come back. I didn't have nearly enough money, so I had my brothers come and help. "Oh, I'm so tired," he explained, his voice weary. He continued rambling about what happened after I left, seemingly annoyed by my lack of reaction. Then he approached me, noticing my packed bags. "Hey, what's with these bags?" he asked, puzzled. "I'm preparing to leave the house because we're getting divorced. I told you that if you defended her, we get divorced. You're not going to say you didn't hear me, nor are you," I replied firmly. My husband looked down at me, his eyes wide with astonishment. Then he raised his gaze and began to yell, "What's going on? Today you've been acting strange all day. I understand that Mom did something terrible, but why do we have to get divorced?" he protested. "I've told you I'm being harassed, asked, and even with evidence and other people's testimony, you still choose your mother, who was almost arrested over me. Is it strange that I want to divorce someone like that? I've had enough," I said, resolute. My husband continued to say various things, but it all went in one ear and out the other. I prepared to leave the house and made preparations for divorce. The next morning, I immediately went to get the divorce papers. When I signed and handed them to my husband, he made a big fuss about not wanting to divorce. However, when I mentioned involving a lawyer, he reluctantly signed, and I submitted the papers right away. Finally, I was able to return to being a stranger. Afterward, my husband moved out of the house and went to live with his parents. He had relied on me for most of the housework, so he couldn't manage it himself. As a result, the house became a mess. Disliking the dirty house, he canceled the apartment lease and decided to return to his parents' home. Additionally, the eldest and third sons faced similar outcomes. On the day when my husband called his brothers to help with the compensation, they each had a big fight with their wives. The wives protested that they didn't want to pay for something that was their mother's fault, but the brothers used their savings to assist their mother without consulting them. Moreover, the brothers believed their mother-in-law's words, thinking they might get arrested because of their unreasonable wives. Their love cooled at the sight of them belittling, and they were immediately confronted with the prospect of divorce. Both of them returned to their parents' homes, refusing to do housework. In the end, the mother-in-law and her 3 childish brothers also returned to the in-laws' house. Thanks to the situation, they became a subject of mockery among the neighbors, who spread the word that all the brothers were abandoned by their wives. Mother-in-law dismissed these rumors as nonsense, passionately defending her sons and blaming their wives for their failures. The husbands, hearing the story, smugly nodded, convinced that divorcing them was the right decision. However, my relationship with the neighbors remained decent, and nobody believed these tales. They were aware of their mother-in-law's nasty personality and kept their distance, quietly laughing at her. Mother-in-law became known as a failed mother who couldn't educate her sons, while the husbands gained a reputation in the neighborhood as mama's boys, who defended their mother instead of protecting their wives. Despite the furious attempts of my mother-in-law and my husband to contact me, I changed all my contact information and moved to a new house. In the end, they couldn't find us, and they lived their lives constantly complaining. Since I'm no longer involved with my mother-in-law and the others, my days have become enjoyable. Being free from the stress of dealing with her is a significant relief, and making new friends has also been wonderful. In fact, during the divorce process, I bonded with the ex-wives of the eldest and third sons over our shared grievances about my mother-in-law. Now we often go out for meals and enjoy shopping on weekends. They've given me such wonderful friends I might even have to thank my ex-husband. The day after tomorrow, we're all planning to visit a new cafe. From now on, we can do what we want. It might sound obvious, but it feels more liberating than ever before. I want to lead my own life without getting involved with such toxic people, and I am genuinely grateful for the friendships I found. I believe I would still be living alone if it weren't for them. The reason I'm not lonely now and the reason I can live happily is all thanks to them. I'm truly thankful, and I hope this relationship continues forever. Did you enjoy the story? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to leave a comment and subscribe for more content like this.
All right, everyone's presentations are done,
Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward.
Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak.
There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer.
Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email.
Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly.
The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk.
He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale.
Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam.
My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father.
Well, you could hardly call it being raised.
After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing.
Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school.
Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out.
I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything.
The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke.
Take care. That was our last conversation.
Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment.
Yet, my father never visited me even once.
I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education.
Listen up.
Our work can change the future of our employees.
Don't drag us down.
On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly.
There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle.
At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state.
But that was long ago.
Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose.
I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said?
I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him.
Someone was watching me with a smirk.
In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go.
You are the latter.
It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened.
Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results.
As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty.
Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey.
I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day.
Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today?
Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today.
I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly.
They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job.
Having joined the company wanting to do customer service.
I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look.
To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally,
Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance.
As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick.
If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America.
Nick began the presentations.
Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them.
The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me.
There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer.
He was likely talking about me.
I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently.
Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right.
After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking.
The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation.
Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life.
I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving.
I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home.
The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk.
In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale.
Nick! What's wrong?
Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick.
And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires.
Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen.
They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday.
Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips.
The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally.
President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles.
Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief.
Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction.
Do you know how much revenue we get from that company?
We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs.
Gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan.
If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized.
Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do.
I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you.
Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you.
Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind.
Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening.
After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason.
He was demanding, get his boss here immediately.
It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training.
What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next.
Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation.
If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you.
I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was.
As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor.
I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room.
What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner.
No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread,
hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry.
Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology.
He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done?
Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason.
I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him.
Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand.
I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor.
Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside.
Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part.
I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers.
Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone.
It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault.
This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf.
He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show.
Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation.
The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared.
Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment?
Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance.
Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too.
It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized.
As for the other requests,
Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load.
I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office.
I was amazed he still hadn't apologized.
You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company.
I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here.
When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it.
Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted.
Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent.
I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned,
I'm moving to the sales department soon.
If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse.
Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it.
On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer.
It's still working hours.
Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer.
Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived.
I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name.
They look good. What are you talking about?
These are plastic bottles.
I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea.
But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company.
It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email.
I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed.
He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important.
You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter.
Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble.
Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation.
Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment.
Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary.
Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too.
I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.